Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to tackle a really critical question. When you're looking at medical evidence, is there really a simple ladder that just leads you straight to the truth? We're always told to trust the gold standard of studies, right? But what if? What if that's only half the story?
You know, every single day we're just flooded with health news, with studies that seem to say opposite things. It can be totally overwhelming. So, how are we supposed to separate the real science from all the noise? Well, it turns out that for decades, the medical world has had this one really powerful, simple idea to do just that.
For a long time, the go-to for the medical community has been a single tool, a seemingly perfect guide for sorting the strong evidence from the weak.
It's called the pyramid of evidence. And the way it works is, well, it's a hierarchy. The whole idea is pretty simple. The higher up a study is on the pyramid, the more rigorous it is, the better it is at filtering out things like bias and error. It's meant to be this nice, clean map to the most trustworthy science out there.
And right at the very top, the absolute peak, you've got the gold standard, the randomized controlled trial, or what you'll hear called an RCT. By randomly giving some people the real treatment and others a placebo, it's designed to kill any bias and prove if something actually works. To really see this pyramid in action, let's dive into a classic medical story.
So, we're going to explore two huge medical stories. The first one is a textbook case for why this pyramid even exists and, how it can really get us to the truth. But the second one shows us exactly where this simple model starts to fall apart. First up, hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. The big question here was all about efficacy. Plain and simple. Does this treatment actually work to prevent heart disease? This is a perfect job for the pyramid.
So for years, you had this literal mountain of evidence coming from what are called observational studies. These are from the lower levels of our pyramid. And all of it was pointing in one direction, that HRT was great. It protected postmenopausal women from heart disease. And based on that, it was prescribed to millions and millions of women.
But then, in 2002, boom, a bombshell. The Women's Health Initiative study came out. And this wasn't just any study. It was a massive gold standard RCT from the very top of the pyramid. The result was a complete 180. The RCT found that HRT didn't just not protect against heart disease, it actually increased the risk. The whole field changed almost overnight.
So, what on earth happened? How could all those earlier studies have gotten it so incredibly wrong? Well, it all came down to hidden biases. The observational studies were packed with what researchers call confounding factors. For instance, the women who chose to take HRT, they were often just healthier people to begin with. Better diets, more exercise. There's also this thing called the healthy adherer bias. Basically, people who are really good about taking their medicine tend to have better outcomes no matter what. The RCT, because it was random, wiped all those biases out and showed what was really going on. So the HRT story is this perfect, powerful lesson, right? When you're asking a straightforward question of efficacy, hey, does this drug work or not? The pyramid is your best friend. The RCT is king. But, and this is a huge but, is that the only kind of question we need to answer in medicine?
And that brings us to the really interesting part. What happens when the question gets more complicated? What do you do when the quote-unquote best tool just isn't the right one for the job? This quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. The pyramid is fantastic for asking if a therapy works, but for so many other vital questions, like how to actually improve a complex system, it's often the completely wrong way to think about it.
Yeah, and here's the thing about RCTs, right? There's a trade-off. They're amazing at controlling for bias. That's what high internal validity means. But man, do they have weaknesses. To get that super clean result, they're often incredibly slow, ridiculously expensive, and they study a very specific, narrow group of people under perfect conditions. That means they often have low external validity. You can't always apply their findings to the messy, complicated real world.
And that brings up this massive question. What if your goal isn't to test a brand new drug in some sterile lab environment? What if you're trying to improve the care that's happening right this second in hospitals all over the country? And that, my friends, brings us to our second story, making emergency heart attack care faster and a whole lot better.
Okay, so for a severe heart attack, time is everything. Literally. The time it takes from a patient hitting the hospital door to getting their blocked artery opened with a balloon, that's the door-to-balloon time. It's a matter of life and death. And we already knew, thanks to those top-of-the-pyramid RCTs, that faster is better. The science was done. But the real problem wasn't what to do, it was how to do it. How do you actually make a huge, complex hospital system move faster?
And this is exactly where that whole pyramid idea just falls apart. I mean, think about it. You can't just randomly assign some hospitals to be fast and some to be slow. It's completely unethical. The gold standard was a total non-starter here. To find the answer, researchers had to look somewhere else entirely. So, to get the answer, researchers had to completely change their thinking. They had to ditch that rigid pyramid and start thinking about their methods more like a toolbox, with different tools for different kinds of jobs.
So where did the life-saving breakthrough come from? Not from the top of the pyramid, not even close. It came from the bottom. They started with qualitative studies. They actually went into the fastest hospitals and just talked to people. They did these deep dive interviews asking, hey, what's your secret? How are you guys so fast? Then they used big observational studies to see if those same strategies would work everywhere else. They used tools designed to ask how and why, not just if. And what they found wasn't some magic pill. It was a list of practical, actionable strategies that any hospital could use. Things like letting the ER doc activate the heart team with a single phone call, or setting a hard 20-minute deadline for the team to show up. These were real-world solutions that came from doing real-world research.
So let's really nail this down. Instead of a pyramid, we're thinking toolbox. And one of the key tools in there? The cohort study. These are perfect for following huge groups of people over long periods of time to see how treatments actually work out in the wild.
And then you've got another really important tool, the case control study. This one's kind of like being a detective. You start with the outcome, say a really rare disease, and you work your way backward to try and find the cause. For some questions, it's absolutely the best tool for the job.
All right, so we've seen the pyramid work perfectly, and we've seen it completely fail. So what's the big idea we should all walk away with?
It really comes down to this. Strong evidence isn't about blindly climbing a pyramid to find the so-called best study type. It's about context. It's about asking, what question are we trying to answer? And then, and this is the important part, did the researchers pick the right tool from the toolbox for that specific job?
So here's the real test. The next time you see a health headline, are you just going to ask where it sits on that old pyramid? Or are you going to ask the smarter question, was it the right tool for the job? Because that shift in thinking right there is the key to becoming a much, much smarter consumer of science.